evening, everybody. My name is Michael Freeston. I'm Director of Quality Improvement at the Early Years Alliance, and I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Melanie Pilcher.
Good evening, everybody.
We're delighted you've chosen to be with us this evening for the next in our series of presentations as part of the Strong Early Years London programme, commissioned by the Mayor of London and led by the Alliance, its partners, CEDA, and various other strategic partners. And the focus of today's session is preparing for your Ofsted inspection under the EYFS 2021. What we aim to cover today is I will give a short overview of the Strong Early Years London programme, just for those of you who have been unaware of it in the past. Hopefully people are gaining an understanding of the type of activities that we offer, but then we will focus the main part of the session on issues pertaining to any forthcoming inspections you may be facing and to make sure they are successful. These sessions are best when they are interactive. We do have opportunities for questions at the end, but if there are things that come up during the session that you don't quite understand or you particularly want us to focus on, then please put them into the chat box. My function after giving the general overview is to try and weave seamlessly any questions into the presentation for Melanie. Otherwise, I'll just interrupt. Kerry Ann is saying she's having technical difficulty. Is there sound? Yes, there should be sound, and it usually means it's an issue at your end, I'm afraid, Kerry Ann. You might want to leave and come back and see if that improves it.
And Keely, Michael Keely's asked if they will get a copy of the slides, which I believe is right, isn't it?
We will circulate a copy of the slides to all participants who are registered tomorrow. And as I've said, we do record these sessions and post them. We are part of the programme, as you'll see in a second. We are developing a website to be a web page located on the London Business Hub's website. That is still under construction. So in the meantime, we are posting these sessions on the Early Years Alliance's YouTube page, and I'll give you more details of that as we go through. Right, without further ado, let's make sure my technology is working. Just a couple of seconds giving you an overview, if you're new to the programme, around the Strong Early Years London initiative. The strapline is support to survive, thrive and grow. The project came out of some research that the Alliance did with CEDA towards the end of last year about the particular sustainability issues being faced by many of London's PVI early years providers, be they nurseries, chains, single site, childminders, whomsoever. Quite concerning issues in terms of the impact of the pandemic and more structural funding issues that have been around, we all know, for many years. So in response to that, the Mayor's office is funding a 10-month programme between May until March of next year, being coordinated and worked in partnership with the 32 London boroughs and other sector organisations and training providers to deliver a range of support to all registered PVI providers across the capital. We're covering a number of topics. These aren't set in stone. They're just the working themes that we have been, it's allowed us to categorize bits of information in different sessions. So we're looking at budgeting and cost control, issues around recruitment, workforce development, apprenticeships, retention, etc. Ofsted and EYFS, which is why you're with us today. Issues around both traditional and social media marketing, press and public relations successfully, issues around governance, particularly for settings that are committee-run preschools, and the issues around individual and collective liability, issues around how to broaden income streams, submitting tenders, etc. Childminders is not a theme, it's just a recognition that we need to cover these topics from the particular perspectives of a childminders. Staff management, such as supervision and appraisal, and also in those situations where people feel as though the time has come to transfer ownership of their programs, or indeed how to acquire other settings, issues around what would need to be considered there, both legally, etc., and other issues. So those are the broad themes that we're covering in different ways over the next 10 months. As I indicated at the outset, one of the main products of the program is a website which aims to become the one-stop shop for all information about business support for the early years sector in London. It will include a searchable web directory When you receive the slides tomorrow, you will be able to access that link through www.businesshub.london. And we invite you to visit the site. This is for all businesses in London, but there is an evolving early years page, which is where we are. We are holding webinars on a monthly basis. This is the second, focusing on effective management, mostly in response to COVID-19. Linked to those are Business Connect training sessions, which are smaller, still being done online, as most things are at the moment. These are being offered on a weekly basis, and I'll talk more about what's coming up in July as we come towards the end of today's program. There are also a series of group surgeries, which is our delivery of events in collaboration with your particular local authority, so that we can focus particularly on PVI providers in your local area, and there will be the opportunity for local authorities to share up-to-date information about funding rates and particular issues in your patch. There will be a dedicated triage phone service providing the similar information to the website for those people who prefer to get their information from a human being rather than a website. And that will lead on to more diagnostic service and more expert guidance, as well as one-to-one consultancies, where we're able to offer in the region of about 3 hours support to really get alongside each provider to actually understand what their issues are and try and help them that way. So it's a range of activities over the next 10 months, and more information will be available through the website. I just thought I'd cover it in general here. I'll talk more about what's coming in July towards the end, as I said. So if you have any questions about the program itself, then please put them in the chat box, but we'll address them at the end rather than interrupting the flow of today's session. So what we're aiming to cover in this session: how Ofsted are currently operating inspections, how the focus of inspections is informed and influenced by the new EYFS 2021 from September, and the implications of these for these changes for your provision, and how you should prepare to make the next inspection a successful one. So those are the various topics, but sometimes these conversations go off at a bit of a tangent with things that come into the chat boxes, but that's why we have Melanie here to be flexible and responsive as we go on. I'll throw a few curveballs in as we move. Right, Melanie, over to you, please, and I'll keep an eye on the chat box.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. Yes, no bend it like Beckham's coming out.
Oh, that's enough.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you. So, yes, as Michael said, with a session like this, there's so many things that we could cover. So we're just really trying to give you the headlines, and then we can discuss things in more detail. So the first thing to start with is just to give you an update on where we are with Ofsted at the moment. So most of you will know that Ofsted resumed their on-site inspections of registered early years providers under the inspection framework on the 4th of May. So it's been a bit hit and miss, hasn't it, since the pandemic, really. They were doing some inspections and then they weren't, and then they were just doing sort of quality monitoring inspections or responding to anything where they had particular concerns about a provider. But we're now back on schedule as far as Ofsted are concerned as of the 4th of May. On the 14th of April, the Education Inspection Framework, the Early Years Inspection Handbook, was updated to reflect inspection during the COVID, the pandemic, and to reference the new inspection window, because again, as you will be aware, this was announced much earlier this year, Ofsted are moving to a 6-year inspection window rather than having the scheduled inspections and the inspection cycle that we've been used to previously. And also the update was to clarify how the disapplications will be considered when they are making a judgment about your provision, because obviously for many of you, you've been operating under duress. And as you know, there were disapplications and modifications to the EYFS that we were allowed, where we were allowed to not deliver parts of the EYFS learning and development requirements, and other things were actually, some of the other restrictions, or sorry, the other requirements were loosened with regard to paediatric first aid, and a reminder that you could relax ratio requirements as well during the pandemic should you need to. So what Ofsted have done in their new inspection handbook is just clarify how they will judge you on when you've utilised those disapplications and modifications. And any of you that have heard me speak before will know that I've said the important thing is to reflect on what you did during the pandemic, whether you utilised any of the disapplications and modifications. So if there was anything that you didn't do because of the pandemic, being clear about what it was and how you ensured that children still got the best possible experience whilst they were with you. So that's what Ofsted will be looking for. Now, as Ofsted often do, they sometimes surprise us by issuing a new update, which they did late last night. They updated the early years inspection handbook again last night in preparation for September. So Michael's just brought up, there's a link to the new handbook, which will come into force from September. And there's also a summary of the changes. Now, some of them I'm just going to go over very quickly, some of the key ones for you.
I've got it on the next slide.
Oh, you've got it there.
Just as a few. There you go. There you go.
Brilliant. So that helps me as a little aid memoir. The changes to the inspection and the COVID-19 pandemic section, these were the changes that were put in April. So nothing new there. If you've looked at the handbook since April, then there's nothing there that's going to surprise you. And Michael's highlighted there for me that in paragraph 52 to 55, which I have in front of me now, there is clarifying requirements to dispel some of the myths around inspection that has led to this, this situation that the sector's got itself into around unnecessary workload for providers. And we did have a question that came in prior to tonight's session, really, that actually links into this about what kind of paperwork Ofsted want to see. Now, we have this from the horse's mouth. Ofsted do not want to see paperwork. And if we look at the inspection schedule, it now clarifies this for us. And I'll just read from the particular document.
Yeah, so I'll be interested what they actually used as their wording, really, because I haven't read it yet, I have to admit.
No, you hadn't read it, had you? And I've got it here in front of me. Let me just find the paper now. Okay. Ofsted does not require providers to provide EYFS curriculum planning in any specific format for inspection. They do not expect you to prepare any performance and child tracking information for Ofsted. They do not expect to see any additional work or to ask children to do work specifically for the inspection. Now, they've been saying this for a while now, and the message has started to get through, especially with the revised EYFS, because that really leads us away from the idea of generating paperwork. And if you look at the non-statutory guidance that supports the new EYFS, so I'm talking about development matters and I'm talking about birth to 5 matters, both of those documents make it very clear that actually we've been doing unnecessary assessment, we've been doing unnecessary paperwork for far too long.
Can I just, this is a lovely phrasing of the question from Catriona.
Yeah.
I will be most interested in what they will be expecting then. And I think that leads us to the conversation about the discussion around curriculum, etc.
It's what they see, not what they read.
Yes.
And it's been like that for a while. Ofsted want to see practice. They don't want to read about it.
It's certainly been the situation since at least the Common Inspection Framework back in 2015, I think it was.
Absolutely.
I'll come back to that in a second. I just wanted to add in Keely's point. We had an inspection last Monday and no paperwork was asked for.
No, and I think that's been reflected in inspections, like Michael said, since the Common Inspection Framework came in. But we've just got into this rut of generating what we call evidence for Ofsted. You know, an evidence, when you think about it, and I think I'm quoting Julian Grenier here, who was the author of Development Matters, saying that evidence and the need to provide evidence seems to suggest that we feel that we're doing something wrong, that we need to prove that we're doing what we're doing. But actually, Ofsted want to see that in our practice. They don't want to see evidence other than what they can see with their own eyes.
Well, I'll come back to that in due course. And there's been a couple of questions that came back to Keely's point. What about paperwork with reference to SCN children or SCN children's reports? Have there been any specific about children with SEND?
Yes, there has actually, but it hasn't come directly from the EYFS. Again, it's come from the non-statutory documents. And the idea being that, yes, of course, you do need to do assessments and observations more regularly on children with additional needs, but actually not generating all this paperwork for the sake of generating paperwork on children who don't need it leaves you free to concentrate more on the children that have got additional needs.
When we do sessions on these, just to sort of summarize that in a particular way, is the frustration of people saying, well, how many observations a week am I expected to do? No, change. The question is, what am I doing the observation for? For what purpose am I doing the observation? What am I learning about the child, etc.?
What is it I need to know? Yes.
Lisa has just Keely's responded very kindly to her colleagues. Nothing was asked for. It was all discussion demonstrating our knowledge and understanding of our children. Excellent. That's exactly what they've been saying. How will they judge if a child is not performing SEAL? Is not a performing SEAL on the day? Sorry, I misread the question. Ofsted inspectors, in my experience, are extremely good at identifying what looks contrived. Yeah. And children are very good at saying, oh, we don't normally do this. You must be very special. Yeah, it is one of the talents of Ofsted inspectors, I have to say, in my experience, that they understand when what they are seeing is real rather than creative.
Absolutely. And Michael, I see that somebody just asked about the 2-year-old progress check. So I'll just clarify that as well. Okay. There are only 2 points in the EYFS where we are required to do summative assessment. And that's been the same since at least 2017, which was the last update of the EYFS. And that is your early years foundation stage profile. So that's the term in which the child turns 5, where that child is assessed by the teachers against the early learning goals. And the other point where summative assessment is required is the 2-year-old progress check. So that's the only requirement for summative assessment within the EYFS. Now, if you choose to do summative assessments because maybe you've got a child moving on up to school, or maybe you've got a child moving to another setting, or maybe, you've got a child that has got additional needs and you feel that actually it's useful to do a summative assessment on that child, that's fine. If you wanted to do a summative assessment terminally, that is fine, as long as you're clear about why you're doing it and what it's telling you.
And a similar question from the slightly different perspective, but it leads to the same answer from Tamsin. We currently offer 2 parents' evenings meetings a year with a summative report. We're now asked to meet parents 3 times a year from September. That's a question mark. I don't think that's a question. If you're changing, that's entirely up to you, Tamsin. Would we be required to write a report progress update evidencing this? Well, not for Ofsted. I don't want to sound rude. Ofsted are interested in whether you hold parents' evenings, and that's all very good. Their question is, how does that improve the learning and the outcomes for the children? Yeah. And that's what they want to discuss.
They want to see that you've got good engagement with parents. Now, if that's how you do that, then that's fine. Yeah. That's how you do it. But there are other ways that people do that as well. So, if that's your way of demonstrating it, then fine. But Ofsted don't want to see the paperwork. They really don't.
And the old chestnut again, will they want to see all the policies? Leander asks.
I wish they did, because I spend huge amounts of my time writing policies and procedures. No, they don't. What they sometimes do, if they feel there's an issue in a setting when they're inspecting them. So, for example, if they think, do you know what, there's things here about safeguarding that I'm a bit concerned about, then they may well ask to see your safeguarding procedure or the relevant procedure. If they think health and safety is a bit dodgy, they may well ask to see that.
The safeguarding one is an interesting one, because they will have conversations with each member of your staff or a random sample, and they will want to hear the same messages from this is what we do if we have a concern. And if one member of staff gives a different answer to somebody else, then they might want to go to the policy to see what it actually says. And the question back to the leader or the manager is, you seem to have an issue with communication or understanding of your policies here. What's going on? It's not the policy. it's the understanding and the application being consistent across all of the settings.
Absolutely. It's a good point to say, actually, Michael, that there are many managers out there who can talk a really good inspection. They know what they're doing, they know about their setting. But if that isn't reflected across the piece in the conversations that they have with the practitioners, with the educators working directly with the children, then you are likely to be judged quite badly on that.
There's a couple of ones that I'm not sure if I'm missing the spellings or something. I was wondering if Ofsted is supposed to ask any particular document to the management team, from Maria. I'm afraid I don't quite understand, but I guess my answer would be no.
Okay, I think I kind of get that. And actually, Michael, I have got an audit that I've prepared for the paperwork that Ofsted might want to see or will ask about, because they will ask about paperwork in the pre-inspection phone call.
In the phone call, right.
So I think, can we share the audit that I've prepared?
We can. We will brand it, if we don't mind, to amend the branding so that it fits within the programme rather than the Early Years Alliance.
Absolutely.
Because it goes more broadly. That's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I was using it for different purposes, but it seems to me that it's very useful for this particular cause as well.
A question from Harriet. Ofsted are saying they want to see children's starting points, which is a summative assessment. Do they expect to see this written down?
No, no. That is one place where it's useful to write those starting points down, and that's something that you can do. But again, it's about the knowledge that the practitioner, the key person, holds in their head about that child.
The best way.
They started, knowing what they're doing now, knowing where they want them to go next.
The best way I've seen that articulated is a member of staff, key person, presumably said to me, "This is Sarah. She came to us at 28 months. She had these issues, or this was her issue in terms of speech, language, and communication. She's now 36 months, has been this. We've been working with her on this, and this has been the improvement." It's that individual member of staff's knowledge about the progress that each child is making. Catriona, this is wonderful news. Yes, thank you. We love to give wonderful news. How can a child who's terrified of strangers, especially after most of them were in their formative years during a pandemic, be expected to show a stranger who possibly makes their career nervous? Absolutely. You're quite right. What they're capable of.
Okay.
Right. Shall we move on? That was thank you.
Move on. I knew we'd get kind of stuck on this bit, but that's great because that's what you need from us. And I've got no problem with that. So just again, a couple more of those changes there.
Pat has put a question. I'll just check the Q&A. What about staff supervision? And I assume that relates back to the question mark. So it's not about children's learning. What about staff supervision?
Again, if they feel that they need to go into that in more detail, then they might want to see those records.
Yeah. But please, but just have them ready. It's not as though you've done something specifically with them.
Yeah.
There are a few other changes on here in terms of the slight changes to the grade descriptors, which I haven't gone into because I haven't looked at it yet, I have to admit.
They're very minor, Michael. They don't really change the actual meaning of the grade descriptors. They've just kind of clarified a few things. So
okay. Yeah. I have to just share with everybody Melanie's frustration today because this was posted on the Ofsted website yesterday. So I'm going on to Melanie first thing this morning. Wow, brilliant. They've changed everything. So we've got a really exciting seminar. And then she spent 4 hours reading one against the other. And actually, it's exactly the same as the previous one. They posted the wrong thing, or the one in anticipation for September is available on the website, but wasn't what they posted. So please, just if I take it back for a second, when you get the slides tomorrow, I'm going the wrong way. Hopefully you can see this slide here with the 2 blue links. That takes you to the new documentation from September, and there is a summary of the changes. But the only way to get to it properly is to follow that link rather than anything that's been circulated by the DFE or Ofsted. That spoiled Melanie's day.
Yes. We won't go there. I've left that behind now. Okay. It was definitely a foul, Michael.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to sort of flag up to you as well is that HMCI, Her Majesty's Chief Inspector, produces an annual report. And the one that was produced just as we were sort of into the pandemic was quite interesting. it told us that more providers at the time were being judged as good, but less were judged outstanding. And that reflects the fact that outstanding is a challenging and exacting judgment, because anybody that's aiming to be outstanding, your starting criteria is good. And if you look at the inspection schedule, if you look at the descriptors, you will see it explains that quite clearly, that for outstanding, it's all of good, plus these additional things as well. So consequently, at the time, it was harder to get an outstanding. HMCI also, and you can see the little picture there of HMCI, who is Amanda Spielman. COVID has outlined the importance of putting children's welfare first. And I don't think any of us will argue that, but that was certainly indicated within the most recent inspection report. Similarly, PSED has been the most significant area of concern in those early days of the pandemic. It will be really interesting to see what the report for 2021 looks like, Michael, won't it?
Very much so, very much so.
Because that will be a very different story, but I'm sure that a lot of these things around PSED, about children's welfare, will be echoed again, if not highlighted. So in that last report, there were 2,260 cancellations and 200 suspensions of registrations. And I think we did a little bit of work as well, didn't we, on the amount of people that had actually cancelled or given up their registration during the pandemic due to sustainability issues. However, at the time, 91% of those were for non-payment of registration fees. So Ofsted cancelled their registration. 5% of them had no children on roll. And this is the one I wanted to flag up to everybody, particularly in light of the pandemic and the fact that a lot of you have lost contact with maybe committee members if you're a committee run group. 4% of cancellation of registration was around serious issues, namely continued failure to meet registration requirements. And that more often than not is that people haven't reported to Ofsted what they should have reported to Ofsted. So, for example, if there's been a change of management, if there's been a notifiable disease within the setting, the reporting requirements there, and as you know, the pandemic, COVID, was actually classified as a notifiable disease. So really things about people not reporting to Ofsted the things that they should be. Now, it says very clearly in the EYFS what those things are. So just make sure, just review what's going on with your management, with your board of trustees, with your committee, whoever you've got, that actually you don't need to notify Ofsted of any changes, because people trip up on that at the best of times. Okay.
Yep.
So moving on to the inspection process itself then. So the Early Years Inspection Handbook, which we've just been talking about with the changes, they describe the main activities that inspectors undertake when they conduct inspections. So I think, Michael, I think you said this once about this. Not only do Ofsted pose the question, but they actually give you the answers, don't they?
You can quote me whenever you want, Melanie. Yeah.
I do sometimes remember what you say. So actually, making use of the handbook, if you haven't got it printed off, if you haven't got it next to you, I'd say, well, why not? Because it's all in there. Part 1 of the handbook describes how you will be inspected. So that talks about the arrangements prior to inspection, the inspection activities on the day, and this is where most of the changes were made. Part 2 describes how you will be judged, the evaluation schedule. So good, outstanding, good, requires improvement, inadequate, and all the grade descriptors are there. So if you want to evaluate your practice, reflect on your practice, then you really need to go straight to that evaluation schedule and ask yourself those questions. Where would we put ourselves here? Are we currently good? And if we're good, could we achieve outstanding? If we're not good, are we actually in breach of registration where we would be inadequate, or are there things that we need to put straight now?
And I'm sure you'll come to this later, but the point I'd emphasize there is also, and are we sufficiently confident to articulate to the inspector during these discussions and during the observations that we are that good? Because that is your evidence.
Absolutely.
It's that confidence of all members of staff. And the other thing they're good at, as well as seeing if they're seeing a sham, they always spot the weakest member of staff and go and speak to that one. or your newest member of staff, or your apprentice, or something. So it is a team game, and for input-based provision.
We do say this as well, that you are really only as good as your weakest member of staff. So yeah, absolutely. I'm going to quickly answer Harish's question because I see it there. Will there be joint observations with the manager? Yes, there certainly will be. That is exactly the same. In the same way, the learning walk is also now quite embedded. And actually, that's where you get the chance to walk around with the inspector and explain to them how your provision runs. And that's where you've got to be absolutely clear that what you say during that learning walk is reflected in the Ofsted,
England have just scored, I think, from the sound of my children.
Oh,
in the back.
Well done. Excellent. Brilliant.
Okay, I'll go on mute for a second, shall I?
Yes. So whilst Michael goes and has a quiet word with his children, will Ofsted want to talk one-to-one? Oh, I missed that. It's just gone off my chat. I'll ask Michael to pick that up in a moment. So the other document that you really need to refer to when you're thinking about your inspection and getting ready for your inspection is Inspecting Safeguarding in Early Years. Okay, that hasn't been updated recently. That's not to say it won't be in light of the pandemic. We're getting messages in now, Michael, about England. That's great. So please make sure those 3 key documents that you need to have on your desk, I sleep with them under my pillow, the EYFS, the inspection schedule, and the safeguarding handbook. Please, all of those.
The question that you missed as it moved through, and I think it's an interesting one. Will Ofsted want to talk one-to-one with staff who look after children with special needs, as they're always busy?
Okay. Yes. What Ofsted will do when they do their joint observation, what they usually do is they will select a child, maybe a child who's on EYPP or a child that they deem to have additional needs. They won't necessarily ask, but they might zone in and think, actually, looking at that child, they've probably got additional needs. Therefore, my joint observation, I'm going to concentrate on that child. And then when the manager, because they do that with the manager or a nominated person, they will expect to see some feedback given to that member of staff. So they will want to talk to the practitioner as well. And yeah, if you're busy, don't forget, because this is a really key point, and I've heard of people doing this, because the Ofsted inspector is there, your priority remains the children. And if you can't speak to that inspector because that child needs you, they would have more respect for you if you said, I'm sorry, this child needs me now, I'll get back to you later.
There's Harish, would they also be looking for staff recruitment procedure documents like DBS? And again, that's all in the round, isn't it, really, in terms of
absolutely. These are documents that you should have in place. You absolutely need them. You don't need them for Ofsted, you need them for the safe management of your provision. So this isn't, when we refer to these documents, we're not thinking about additional paperwork. These are documents that you'd have to have in place. They're not necessarily going to ask to see them. They may if they've got concerns, but they won't necessarily ask to see them.
We had a question just from, I've just gone up my screen now, from a childminder, from Catriona. I'm a childminder. How will this work for me? In a nutshell, please, Melanie?
Well, as you know, childminders don't have to have written policies and procedures anyway. So, but you'd still be expected in your practice to demonstrate that you're meeting those requirements of the EYFS, unless it specifies within the EYFS that you don't have to. And as you know, in the EYFS, some of the things it says, this doesn't refer to childminders. So they would, it's exactly the same way. You don't have to provide paperwork. If you've got something you particularly want to show the inspector, then do by all means. But the chances are, again, they want to observe how you are with the children.
Excellent. Moving it on. There we go.
Okay, so before the inspection, the inspector will do some research about your setting, including that the accuracy of information about individuals connected with the registration is up to date. And again, I will go back to that fact. with the pandemic and the way it's been, with people furloughed or people that have actually left the setting or whatever, it's absolutely paramount that you make sure that the information that Ofsted's got is up to date. There's no leeway on that.
There are so many sad Ofsted reports that you see that this is a good provision, but I have to give it a requires improvement because they failed to notify Ofsted of the EY2 change to committee members.
Yeah.
It's such a disappointment.
How frustrating is that?
And remember, not so much with an RI because the return inspection will be closer, but if you're on a good and you thought you were getting an inspection and wanted to go outstanding, that could be 6 years before your next inspection.
Anything up to, yes, absolutely. They will also want to see the progress made with any actions or recommendations raised at the last inspection visit. So pandemic or not, they will have looked at your last inspection report, your most recent inspection report. So you need to look at it too and just remind yourself of what Ofsted said last time. Don't leave it till the last minute. And again, demonstrating improvement. Some people have quite naturally kept a record. It's almost like their own learning journal of how they've managed the pandemic. And if people have done that, brilliant, because, you know, again, it helps you to reflect back and be able to talk to an inspector about how you handled the pandemic, how you prioritise children, how you maintain safeguarding and so on.
There's a question at the level of detail that you know, but I don't. Do you have to update them about deputy changes or just the manager with the deputy returning? I thought it was only the manager, isn't it?
It's only the manager. You know, yes, you've still got to have a named deputy in place, but that's down to you really to put.
Eileen's put a question. There was an update on the website that you only need to inform Ofsted of a hospital visit if a child stays overnight. Is this expected to be temporary or is this the new policy? That's one I don't know.
Okay, that is clarification because Ofsted, and I remember talking to contacting Ofsted about this very thing, that Ofsted were getting an awful lot of over-reporting. People were being careful, so they were reporting to Ofsted. So they clarified it. So it's not new, it's not different, it's clarification. It's part of Ofsted's myth busting.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Are we moving on?
Yes.
Have you mentioned disapplications? Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Again, I mentioned that earlier as well. So thinking about what Ofsted are going to be doing on the day then, again, to reinforce that idea, Ofsted will be observing. Long gone are the days when Ofsted sat in the office with your policies and procedures manual and probably barely saw a child during an inspection. Those days are long gone. They want to see children at play. They want to see the interactions between practitioners and children. This is where they're looking at the quality of teaching and learning that is happening. We've been mentioning a little bit about that intent, the implementation and the impact, talking to practitioners about what is their intent for this activity. What is their implementation? How is this actually happening? And what is the hoped for outcome of that? They will look to see how care routines are also used to support children's personal development, including your approach to toilet training. So the idea that these things aren't just routine tasks that are undertaken almost like a conveyor belt, but actually how those things help to support a child's PSCD. How they help to, if you remember in the new EYFS, they talk very much about children being able to maintain their own personal needs, if you like, or take care of their personal needs. So it's part of that, how you're encouraging them and supporting them to do that. The inspector will be talking. So there we go, observing, talking to children and practitioners about the activities provided. They will talk to parents. They will talk to parents. Even now, with restrictions in place, they will still want to make arrangements to speak to parents where they can. They will be talking to you about your assessment. And when I say you here, I mean not just managers, I mean educators, the practitioners working directly with the children about your assessment of what children know and can do and how you're building on it. That's what Ofsted want to see. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to read it. Okay, Michael?
I've just had a couple of questions.
Mm.
Khadija, if someone offers to volunteer but they've come from another country, do you have to check their criminal record abroad as well as the DBS?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's thrown me a little bit. I remember writing something about this or looking into this myself, but yes, it does say this very clearly in the EYFS that is the case. So yes, you
Right.
must do.
And there's a question which Uzma, she's an outstanding childminder. Congratulations. Inspected in 2016-17. When will I be due my next inspection?
somewhere in that 6-year window. Now, Ofsted will prioritise these inspections now. So somebody that is outstanding currently is likely to be at the back of the list. However, if information comes to light about you in the meantime, then Ofsted will bring your inspection forward. Let's face it, at the moment, they've got a bit of a backlog as well to catch up with. So, you know,
Right.
it's
Okay.
very much done on a risk assessment basis.
Leander has asked, what would they be looking for if we have children with different languages?
They will be looking at how those children are supported in the setting. They absolutely. Have we
2-0.
scored again, Michael?
2-0. Sorry, I'll go on mute.
No, that I'm sure we're very grateful there to Michael's children for keeping us in the loop. That is brilliant. Yes, sorry, I lost my train of thought there, and I've I've actually forgotten what the question was, Michael.
We were talking about children with English as an additional language.
Yeah, absolutely. If you bring it back to the very principles of the EYFS that you are meeting at every child's needs, every unique child's needs. So a child who's got English as an additional language, they will want to talk to you about how you're supporting that. Does that answer? Because I could go into loads of detail about.
No. I think that is it is about the quality of the provision for all children. Nikuru has come back again. How do you check a criminal record abroad? If I recall, there is the issue in terms of embassies, approaches, and things like that. It is a difficult and challenging thing to do, but you have to be able to demonstrate you have done it.
Yes, and there is a link, there is a website. I remember at the time looking at all this, and there is a link to
we'll find it offline, and we'll make sure we include it when we circulate information to everybody.
Definitely,
thank you.
Definitely. Okay, so I think we can move on. So your self-evaluation. You do not have to have a written self-evaluation anymore. Ofsted Seth went by about 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah, more.
Yes, time goes so quickly now, Michael.
It was Liz Truss.
Was it really? So we're going back to 2012 at least.
She considered it to be one of those unnecessary pieces of bureaucracy that was hampering the early years sector. Which
is obviously how she's managing to secure these contracts abroad by cutting through.
We are recording this, so be careful what you say. Okay. Thank you. Carry on. Yes.
So you don't have to have a written SEF, but the inspector will want to discuss the quality of care and education you provide and provided during COVID. So really, really important there that you think about how you've got on with it, really. What you did, what you changed, what was a challenge, what wasn't, what were your successes, celebrate them, because after all, that's demonstration of excellent leadership and management, which is part of the inspection schedule, isn't it? Leadership and management, to show, look, this is what we put in place during the pandemic, and you can talk about that.
Sorry, I've just, Liz, bless her, thank you, has just put in the link into the chat for the overseas criminal records checks. Thank you, Liz, that's really helpful. And please, Nikuru, please make a note, and others of you as well.
Yeah, because I really didn't want to go there again. I found that really hard to.
There's a question about the SEF. They said it's good practice in doing so. From Tina, we would agree. In the Alliance, we always encourage members to continue with the SEF because you've got to do this self-evaluation anyway. Why not keep a record of it? It's for you to improve your practice, and we require it of all of our nurseries.
We certainly do, yes. But if you don't have a written SEF, then Ofsted will want you to be able to demonstrate, to talk it. And to be honest, I think it's a lot easier to have it written down, isn't it?
Yeah.
And say, look, this is what we do well, this is what we need to improve, and so on. Discussing how well you meet the needs of the children. So again, including those who did not attend during the pandemic. considering how well you evaluate your provision and know how you can improve or maintain high standards. So even if you're currently outstanding, Ofsted will want to see how you really are working to maintain and improve those high standards. Oh, the overseas check link, Michael, it might just have come to us rather than everybody. So
I think it went to all participants. I will copy it
in there in chat somewhere.
I'll put it in and
we'll find it for you, don't worry. Okay. Discuss how you evaluate practice now and then. So how you're doing it now and how you did it throughout the pandemic. They will test the accuracy of what you've been said. So remember what I said about some managers can talk a really good inspection, and that's fine as long as it's reflected in what everything else is happening in the setting, what people are saying and what can be seen. Okay, so if we just move on again, Michael, thank you.
Sorry, I was just doing that, copying across. Okay, right, thank you.
Right. A big part of this, obviously, is evaluating the quality of your teaching. And again, they want to observe. They want to see the quality of teaching. And this will help them to judge the contribution that you make to children's learning, their progress, their safety, and their well-being, and to make detailed and specific recommendations about improvement needed to those judgments. I always say, and I think I'm sure Michael will agree with me, that an established system of peer observation in your setting will ensure that you are used to being observed with these things in mind. Peer observation went out of fashion for a while because I think people started to think, well, Ofsted are going to observe and they will see what they want to see. But actually, having that established peer observation in place where your educators are used to you or to being observed or to observing each other, it's not mandatory. From Marsha, I can see that it's not mandatory. I think it's good practice because you need to know, if you happen to be a manager, you need to know what's going on. It's part of leadership and management that you know what's happening out there in your rooms, in your classrooms, in your group rooms. And the best way to do that, the most effective way to do that, is to do those peer observations and to get people doing them to each other as well.
And I would also add to that peer-on-peer learning walks, so the sort of doing a mock version of what the inspector will do with the manager. Just do it with each other, do it with the room leaders, etc., because it's that ability to articulate what you know is the good practice in your setting. For those people who've put questions into the Q&A, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to come to those when we finish the slides. I'm not ignoring them, just that there's a nice summary one, so I'll bring it on from there.
Yeah.
And Katrina's like, how long will inspectors be interested in the pandemic outcomes? You're assuming the pandemic has gone to start with there, I think, Katriona. I think it seems only relevant for a short term going forward. I think if we take the Children's Commissioner's view on this, all of our policies going forward should be focused around the impact of the pandemic on children. If we have an effective central government approach to policy development, I think the outcomes of the pandemic will be a feature of Ofsted's inspections for a long time to come. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, I can't add anything to that, really. You know, we don't know what's happening next. And in the meantime, we have to keep meeting the needs of children who, for some of them, this pandemic has lasted for half their lives.
Yes.
I think that puts it into perspective. So it's all about intent, implementation, and impact. These are terms that you should all now be familiar with. So if you're not, they've been in the inspection schedule since 2017. So in effect, Ofsted almost preempted the revised EYFS by talking about the intent, the implementation, and the impact of our early years curriculum. So when you're looking at your new EYFS that comes into force from September, you will see the educational programs, which are in effect our curriculum. Those two terms are quite interchangeable, really, and sometimes Ofsted refer to curriculum and educational programs quite interchangeably. So the EYFS, sorry, Michael, can we just go back?
My apologies.
just wanted to reinforce the EYFS provides the curriculum framework with those educational programs that leaders build on to decide what they intend children to learn and develop. We've got to be better at being confident in what we want children to learn and develop. And this doesn't come from a list of statements in the current development matters. So the one that's got the what almost looks like the checklist of the statements of what a child might be doing. This is one of the reasons why they want to be very clear about this. Those ideas of working to a statement, you know, at the age of 3, a child should be able to kick a ball, is just not it. It's about what you know, children. You know those children. You know the unique children, you know what you want them to learn and develop. You can refer to the educational programme, which gives you a very broad outline of what that might be. You can refer to the new non-statutory guidance, Development Matters or Birth to 5 Matters, for further ideas and examples of that, and how you can, practitioners can actually provide for that, and what an enabling environment looks like, and so on. But it's you that actually devises your curriculum, you and the child together. Leaders and providers decide how to implement the curriculum so that children make progress in the 7 areas of learning. And again, they've clarified in the inspection document that how you do that is down to you. As long as you're covering all those 7 areas of learning and development, then Ofsted will be happy. And you evaluate the impact of the curriculum by checking what children know and can do, not through testing them, but through recognising the things that they are on the cusp of mastering, the things that they need more support with, and being able to talk about that. Okay, Michael?
Thank you. Oh, I've gone too far.
Yes. Oh, you have back one.
There we go. Yep, no, it's done.
There we go. Okay, your curriculum should be ambitious, and it's you that make it ambitious, and it's only ambitious, like I said, if it comes from you and it comes from those unique children that you're working with. And by ambitious, it should be, you know, it should be, what should I say? It should be stretching children, if you like. You want to be ambitious for children. You want to see them do the very best. It should be coherently planned and sequenced. And again, that doesn't have to be written down. You might have ideas throughout the year of certain things, certain activities that you're going to do on a monthly basis, a termly basis, or so on. But that's really as far as it needs to go, because actually we're planning and sequencing our curriculum based on that immediate feedback we get through the formative assessments that we do. We're doing those assessments all the time. Again, we're not writing them down, but we're observing something, and that tells us what we need to do for that child, what sort of activities we need to provide next. It should be adaptable and designed and developed for children with special educational needs and disabilities, as you would expect. It should be broad and balanced for all children. And as soon as you start devising your curriculum against those individual statements in Development Matters, you are narrowing your curriculum.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time, Melanie,
yes.
and I should have checked how many slides we've got going forward.
We've only got one, so there you go.
Okay, oh, brilliant. There we go. Well, we've got the questions to come through. There we go.
Yeah, so we put the links there for the further information for you. I'm sure there's lots of questions. So yes, I will try and tackle. I shall, again, another football analogy. I will tackle the questions.
Thank you. I'll just finish before we go back to the questions. Thank you for that, Melanie. Excellent as ever, and hopefully people will agree with that at home, and certainly from the questions and the correspondence we've had, I think that you've been very engaged. I just want to give you some information about what's coming up in terms of the Business Connect schedules, which are the smaller sessions with about 25-30 people on each session, which allows for conversation and dialogue to take place, and more in the chat functions. There is a business health check for childminders. It's happening this Thursday between 7 and 8. And I do apologize. I had hoped to put the URL to register for that on the slides. And I will get that done by the time we send out tomorrow. So that's happening this Thursday for those of you who are childminders. and key elements of budgeting and financial forecasting and how an apprentice can be good for your business. I might have to swap those around because of staff clashes and things like that. And then also a session looking at exploring new income streams, which is planned for Tuesday the 20th. So the opportunity to look out for tenders, new business opportunities, etc. And we put that at 12:30 till 1:30 in the afternoon as a lunch and learn session. So if you sit down with your sandwich or whatever, spend your hour with us, please, or the deliverers of that session, so that you can give consideration to learning as well as eating. So thank you, Melanie. I'll just run through the questions as best I can.
Having a look, I haven't seen any additional ones come in. That's
well, there's a couple of it was the question since the one from Uzma about there was another question about when will we face our next inspection. Same thing within from Pat, that will be within this 6-year window. Now I usually get parents to fill in a questionnaire. This is shown to them. Is this useful? It is useful in as much that it's a demonstration of how you engage parents. But what the inspector will want to do is, okay, they told you that, what have you done? How did you respond, and how has that improved the child's experience and the family's experience in your setting? It's the thinking through. It's the same with, we used to present lots of documentation about my staff has been on all of this training. That is no longer the issue. The issue is, so what difference has that made to their practice? That's what they need to be able to articulate, and that's what the Ofsted inspector will be interested in.
Oh, go on. I was going to say, I've seen one from Jenny that I'll take if
yeah, okay.
That whilst you have a look for any others. The biggest challenge we face is staff recruitment and retention. The tricky thing is new staff getting to know children. What I will say, Jenny, is that when we take staff away from children to do paperwork, they don't know them as well. And there's actually somewhere I've seen a lovely example of if you say they're doing observations and assessments, it actually takes 70% of their time away from the children. So if you want new staff to get to know children, let them just work directly with them and not worry about running off to write observations and assessments up.
There's a lovely question from Thinko, because she's answered her own question. I assume the inspector will still want to evaluate the practitioner's knowledge in the EYFS curriculum. Yes. How will he or she gauge the practitioner's understanding? Is it just by talking to the practitioners? If he doesn't want to see any paperwork or any data, that helps prove so much. So the practitioners need to be very, very articulate. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are absolutely right, Thinko. Yes, you've answered everything there. It is that demonstration of skills, knowledge, and understanding through discussion, and also through what they see the practitioner doing with the children.
And I think one of the ways that you can actually kind of rehearse that, if you like, is, by asking yourself, well, if you're the manager, asking staff, oh, I see you've got a brilliant activity set up there. What was your intent for that? So start using that terminology and getting them thinking in terms of intent, implementation, and impact, and talk to them.
Natasha has asked a technical question. Can we get a link to this recording later? Love to share it with staff. That's very kind of you. Yes, we will. This will be available on the Alliance's YouTube page. If you go to our website, eyalliance.org.uk, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, there is Visit Us on YouTube, I think it's called. It's a little icon, takes you to all of the webinars that the Alliance has done, either as its own organisation or as part of the Strong Early Years London thing, whilst we're building the dedicated website. I think, unless there's anything that has come through in the chat, please can you email us?
Couple there I can pick up on. I think Beverly's asked, will the inspections be carried out face-to-face and remote? Where possible, Ofsted want to actually carry out the inspections face-to-face. And they will ask you about your arrangements as well. So, for example, can they use the toilet and things like that?
Right. I think, Melanie, yes. I'll just, as is those of you who've been with us before on webinars, I usually spend these last 15 seconds wittering away whilst anybody else is typing anything that they would like to add. Beyond that, it just remains for me to say thank you to Melanie particularly, but to all of our participants today for joining us rather than the football match. And it's been delightful to have you with us. Thank you for all of your questions, comments, etc. We will circulate the copies of the slides tomorrow. And as I say, the website is available. Thank you so much for your very kind comments at the end. Please, everybody, go and enjoy the rest of your evenings. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Final whistle then, Michael.